You've been watching Scott Hewett flying his John Higgins-designed F-20 Tiger Shark, as well as his 8-foot flying wing he calls Lurch. In the spring of '95, I met Scott at Sunset State Beach, which is located on the Monterey Bay. I was new to RC flying and very impressed with Scott's unique flying style. He flew without fear of crashing and was always performing high-speed radical maneuvers when the lift was good. This one's called an in-your-face. Since becoming friends, we've made several trips to various slopes in the western states in search of lift. Our lift ticket journey starts with a 5-day road trip to attend an alpine soaring event at Wallowa Lake State Park in Oregon.
We're on our way to Dave Reese's personal hideout called Wallowa Lake, Mount Howard to be exact. And we're about 3 miles from what Theodore Malin refers to as the Gauntlet. It's a little town called Elgin, Oregon. It just so happens that we're going to stop and pick up a bottle of gin at Elgin. And I understand the local sheriff there kind of likes to subsidize his income with us tourists coming through town. And it's either $100 for every 5 miles an hour over the speed limit or a glider. So I guess Lurch might be on the blocks this afternoon.
After more than 15 hours on the road, we finally arrived, and within a few minutes we boarded the tram and took the scenic 4,000-foot ride to the top of Mount Howard. The view from the top was awesome, but the lift was pretty marginal. So the next day, a few of us decided to drive out towards the Imnaha Canyon and do a little exploring. We ended up at a place called Buckhorn Lookout, which is a scenic viewpoint overlooking the knife-edge ridges of the Imnaha Canyon. The slope and thermal lift was great for most of the day, but a couple of times it shut down completely, forcing both Neil and myself to land out in the canyon below. Scott and I decided to leave a day early so we'd have some time to explore a few slopes on the way home. After studying the map, we decided our first stop would be Dixie Butte, which is located in the Malheur National Forest in Oregon. The south side of the slope was very impressive. It dropped for over 1,000 feet, but there was no wind to speak of. We continued on to the saddle near the summit and found the north side still had a few patches of snow, as well as a light breeze blowing up the face. It was getting late, so we drove back over to Highway 395 and headed south towards Abert Rim to camp. The next morning, we drove to the nearby town of Lakeview and found this slope just east of town called the Radio Towers. After Scott got a quick flight in with my Climax, we decided to look for some more slopes along the Forest Service Road that leads to the top of Abert Rim. After about 30 minutes of driving, we reached a scenic viewpoint that had a pretty decent slope to fly from. The LZ wasn't too good, but the lift was very consistent. A little while later, we arrived at the top, and the view was impressive. There was a good mix of thermal and slope lift, as well as truckloads of mosquitoes. We left Abert Rim traveling south on 395 and found a good slope just above Goose Lake, which in itself is bisected by the California and Oregon border. The slope lift was very smooth for an inland site, and there was plenty of lift for Scott to finally get a flight in with his Vindicator. We continued our journey home and camped near Redding, California, putting us in striking distance of Tick Point by the next afternoon. When we arrived at Tick Point, we were greeted by some strong winds, but it was cornering pretty badly, so Scott decided to try and hand catch his F-20. Keep in mind this plane doesn't have flaps, and the wing loading is around 26 ounces per square foot. That was pretty cool, Scott, but if you really want to impress this crowd, you're going to have to do that inverted. We continued south, crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, and decided to check out a slope we spotted near Fort Point. Man, were we impressed. The slope was nearly vertical and dropped for a couple hundred feet to the beach below. The wind was blowing about 30 miles per hour straight in, and the LZ made a postage stamp look big. It took Scott all of about 30 seconds to launch his Higgins F-20. What a great way to finish our trip. Located less than 2 hours from the Bay Area is Los Banos Creek Reservoir State Park. This is a great venue to host an event at because you can fly in almost any wind direction. Today we're going to have a brief look at some of the models from the South Bay Soaring Society's annual scale event. This event draws scale enthusiasts from all over the U.S., and there is always a nice selection of vintage as well as modern scale sailplanes on display. This event is usually held in April. For more information, please visit sbss.org. Welcome to Point of the Mountain. This is one of several slopes at the Intermountain Silent Flyers host Soar, Utah, a scale and fun fly event that is usually held every 2 years. The slope is actually a sandbar that was formed by prehistoric Lake Boonville and is located at the base of the Wasatch Range near the town of Draper. The south side rises approximately 400 feet from the valley floor and gives you a terrific view of Utah Lake and the surrounding areas.
That wingtip over there, let's put this up on the block. I just want to see the surface to see how it looks center-wise and throw-wise. I'd like a little more aggressive elevator in this wind. Okay, can you kick us on, Dave? Receiver on? Yeah, it's on. You're dead, man. Quiet. Try the switch the other way. Oh, wait a minute. There you go. Down below too, that's got to make these. One, two, three. I can smell fire. Can you see what's burning?
No, the battery's not hot. I don't know where the spinner is.
I'll go down and have another look.
What happened today?
I think the battery malfunctioned on us. We noticed when it crashed there was smoke coming out of it, so the electrical problem probably.
Without electricity, you don't have much control, huh?
No, once the battery goes, why, you're finished.
Another excellent Soar Utah site is located near the top of 9,000-foot Francis Peak. The slope rises nearly 5,000 feet from the valley floor and gives you a commanding view of Antelope Island and the Great Salt Lake. This is a fantastic place to fly from, and the lift can be just as incredible as the view. Surrounded by the waters of the Great Salt Lake, our last stop is Antelope Island State Park. The main slope is roughly 200 feet high, faces primarily southwest, and the air is usually smooth as silk. This is another excellent Utah soaring site, and like Point of the Mountain and Francis Peak, the views of the surrounding area are spectacular. For more information on the Soar Utah event, or for directions to the many flying sites in the Salt Lake City area, please visit silentflyer.org. Welcome to Cajon Summit. This is a site where the Inland Slope Rebels host their annual Power Scale Soaring Festival. This south-facing slope, known for its reliable and often extreme lift, rises nearly 1,000 feet from the valley floor. The ridge extends primarily east and west for more than a mile, creating a huge and awesome slope to fly from. During the event, the slope is divided into two sections to avoid unwanted mid-airs. The east end of the slope is the fast lane where most of the fiberglass models like to fly formation. This type of flying is referred to as doing stall turns or half pipes. Occasionally these highly detailed planes collide. Sometimes they recover and continue flying, while other times the damage can be quite extensive. Let's look in on the aftermath of one such mid-air between Carl Maas and Joe Chaban.
No, that's from landing.
That's what I mean, when it hit the ground.
Oh, yeah. Right, yeah,
Just yanked it out like that.
Did you get the before shot? No?
Okay, here's the before shot.
Almost.
Ooh, it's pretty.
Look good, doesn't it?
Fire's still looking good?
Disregard that little scratch.
Now, the fact that they nicknamed those things jugs didn't have anything to do with you putting Elvira on there, did it?
No. This is where it hit. That's why the fuselage.
Yeah, but then he scuffed through here.
Right.
Then
the aftershock.
Oh.
That's not where I hit you. I hit enough time.
Yep, there's the FAA construction. You rammed him, man.
Thanks for being there.
Mid-airs are an accepted part of the sport, and as you can see, they are very good-natured about it. For them, the camaraderie and adrenaline rush that comes from this type of flying is well worth the risk. These 4 PSS planes were designed by Slope Scale and are being flown by Brian Laird, Carl Maas, Paul Masura, and Ralph Roberts. This is the biggest gathering of hardcore slopers on the West Coast. The event draws the best innovators and craftsmen in the sport, along with the top PSS scale manufacturers and their latest creations. The rest of the slope is open to all types of scale models and flying styles. This is Dave Garwood's beautifully finished British Aerospace Hawk. This model was designed by Doug Buchanan. Doug Blackburn scratch-built this fiberglass version of the North American OV-10. It flew well, and with a firefighting finish, it looked very realistic in the air. The event is run over the Memorial Day weekend and has a 50-pilot limit. The morning of the first day, there was a brief pilots meeting where the ISR crew explained the rules and instruct those interested how to sign up for the scale competition. The models are then static judged for scale outline, craftsmanship, finish, and extra points are given if it's a scratch build. The models are also required to be flown at least once. The creativity of the participants and the quality of these finely detailed models is incredible. Here's a few of the past winners. The Inland Slope Rebels really put on a first-rate event. Thanks to the ISR wives and girlfriends, you can head over to the food tent and pick up a soda, or if you're hungry, a complete lunch. They also have one of the best raffles on the planet, thanks to the many generous sponsors that help support this event. Let's head back over to the slope now and check out a few more flights. Wade Clues gives Greg Matson's large-scale P-51 a toss for its maiden voyage. Made entirely of EPP foam, this kit was originally designed by Wade, and Greg really did a superb job building and finishing it. Besides having 6 servos to operate the control surfaces, it also had 3 more servos installed for operating the slidey canopy, drop tanks, and onboard machine gun noise. Jeff Fukushima of Fortec Models scratch-built this great-looking Lockheed T-33. It has a fiberglass fuse and foam-sheeted wings, and in spite of the light lift, Jeff still managed to get in a few good laps on its maiden flight. Tom Ramirez launches Wade-Kluse's scratch-built T-33. Fortunately, it sustained very little damage because it's made of EPP foam. After changing out a faulty receiver, Tom launched it again, and this time it flew as good as it looks. Wade also installed a turbine noisemaker on board, which sounded very cool as it flew by. These large-scale P-51s were also designed by Wade, and he and his friend Tom did a really nice job finishing them with the same paint scheme and squadron markings. Dave Winslick and Steve Wilcox are flying a couple of BD-5Js that Dave designed. These are also made from EPP foam and have a 30-inch wingspan with an all-up weight of about 7 ounces. Believe it or not, one of these was clocked in a dive at over 100 miles per hour with no ballast on board. Not too shabby for a little foamy. "11-year-old Ian Sanders launches his EPP Foam 51 for a few fun laps. This model was designed by his father, Dave Sanders, of Dave's Aircrafts Works. Steve Wilcox, with the help of Dave Winslick and Greg Matson, prepared to launch his original design Glass Air Falcon. With a wingspan of almost 9 feet, it was the largest EPP foam model most folks had ever seen. The plane weighs 19 pounds unballasted and has a wing loading of 32 ounces per square foot. With ballast, the wing loading comes in at a whopping 54 ounces per square foot. Steve did such a fantastic job building and detailing this plane that it really looked like a full-scale model as it flew down the ridge. On the last day of the event, we were all treated to a fantastic flying demonstration by Brian Laird, Carl Moss, Jeff Fukushima, Ralph Roberts, Dave Garwood, Joe Chavon, and Paul Masura. Keep in mind, no two planes have the exact same wing loading, and in spite of this, they all do a great job at keeping the 7 planes in tight formation. All of these fiberglass planes were designed by Slope Scale and Vortec models.
Well, we'd like to thank everybody for coming out to the second annual Spring PSS Festival. The ISR thanks everyone for the support that they gave us this year. We had a really good event, and hopefully we'll see everybody again next year for an even bigger and better one.
You bet. Had 2 great days of flying, so we appreciate everybody coming out. Thanks.
This event is held every spring during the Memorial Day weekend. For more information, please visit inlandsloperebels.com. In 1996, Pat Bowman ran across a material called expanded polypropylene, or EPP. He is responsible for introducing this miracle foam to the rest of the RC world, which would ultimately revolutionize how sailplanes are designed and flown.
First time that I ran across EPP foam, I was working for a company that had a lot of naval contracts, and this particular contract called out for a certain material to use for packaging. So I ordered it, and When I started looking at the material, I noticed that it was really different than most of the packaging that I used before, that it was really resilient and didn't dent and would just bounce if you hit it on the floor or something. I thought, well, this might be a good foam for the combat planes. I took the material home and cut a wing out of it and made a small 48-inch airplane out of it. And took it up on the Parker Mountain and tried it out, and it worked very well, and it would bounce when it hit the ground. So I think it was about a week later or so, you called me up and said he was going to New Zealand. He wanted me to build him a plane, so I didn't have time. So I said, well, here, try this one out. It just, I just made it and see how it works. So
this is it after a few years of life and a few covering jobs, and it needs actually one more covering job. It's showing its wear again, but it's kind of neat that the first ever EPP airplane still survives. It's done a lot of combating. When Pat gave it to me, it was nice and pristine and clean, and the wing was just literally just double sticky taped on. So I actually just did the fuselage as carry-on and threw the wing on top of my box, just used it as part of the padding for the F-3B type airplanes I took to New Zealand, and had a lot of fun with it down there. The guys went nuts because they were just getting into combat with the airplanes like the Anabats and such back then with the white foam. And they saw this thing and they loved it, and the only challenge they had is they couldn't find the APP foam down in New Zealand, so ended up taking them a few chunks here and there so they could start building up their own EPP airplanes. The combat and the indestructible aspects really thrills the kids in the hobby, the teenagers that grew up on video games and the big thrill of going out and doing the battle on the screen. They can actually go out and do battle in the air with these airplanes, and it's a lot of fun to go out and try and knock your best buddy out of the sky without having to worry about fixing up the airplane.
What used to take most of the time months for people to learn how to fly because they'd crash and have to rebuild, and they didn't get a lot of stick time. But with the foamies, you just crash, you go get it, pick it up, you throw it off, you learn by your crashes, and the more crashes you do, the faster you learn.
Pat has a large selection of high-performance EPP sailplanes available. His newest kit is a flying wing called the JW. The airfoil is designed by Joe Wurts specifically for Dynamic Soaring. In May of 1997, Roy Axford had an idea. He was tired of going to the slope only to find no one there to combat with. So he enlisted the help of his friends Bill Swingle and Charles McMurray to help him start an informal combat event at Los Banos. They picked the third Sunday in July and spread the word on the internet. They had a fantastic turnout of about 30 pilots. The bash has happened once a month ever since.
Which airplane am I? There I am.
Biplanes.
Sorry, Roy. Totally accent.
Now there's another junior.
Oh, yeah. Didn't you know?
All AMA sanctioned. Everybody has proper insurance. Deep pocket.
Yeah! Oh!
So ready for what?
Oh, it's soft.
The lip is dying.
Flying the dirty. Oh!
But you gotta live.
And I did, buddy.
Oh, Bill did. Whoa, where am I?
Oh!
Finally I get hit.
I got you. I got you.
Oh!
Timmy goes down.
Well, I
All right, let's hear some.
Oh! Mongo Jr.
There we go.
Whoa!
Now Bill's it again. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Oh!
Did it again.
Hands in contact.
Charlie's playing.
Hey, man.
Oh my! Dave! Playing back yet?
Ricky's it. Twice, yeah. Ooh, those are bad noises. Oh!
Sorry about that.
What a flow! Oh!
Take your head off, John. Oh!
Nice recovery, Bill.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh my!
Little instruction here for the young'uns. He's explaining a washout, wash in, downwind turns, and reflex all in the same sentence. Got quite a few. This is after the Saturday speed trials, and as you can see, we have what would be commonly referred to as the fur ball. There's certainly a lot of hitting. Holy mackerel, Andy. Let's get back here and check out all the action here. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Some other interesting flyers from all over the world. Notice the particular antenna angle of some of these pilots. I'm beginning to wonder if he's not trying to tell us something. This gentleman's much prouder. As we get on, maybe we should just look at antennas only. Well, don't look at antennas only. There we are. There's a specimen on the slope. We'll go on here. Look from one. That's a Doug Boyd, real balls. You can see the nice antenna he's got there. Now look at this close partnership. Oh, is this special? I'm not going to let you see what they're doing with their hands. Let's just stay on their faces focused here. That's Rick Ellison on the right. And Sir Citizen, Good Citizen Stone on the left. Notice how this is kind of like a mating call here, the way not too many people will expose themselves to the terror of Chandler Butte. Oh, Mr. Varese got nailed. Howsoever, true to his form, he's managed to survive. He's not getting real high right now. He's doing some evasive maneuvers. Oh my goodness, see that one he took out?
You know, it's kind of funny. I remember asking you, Dave, oh God, when I first started flying, well, you fly any other place? And you start telling me about this place called Eagle Butte. Now I know.
What Cliff knows is that Eagle has some of the strongest slope lift in the West. It's not uncommon to see winds in excess of 60 miles per hour here, but more typically in the spring and summer it's in the 20 to 35 knot range. Eagle Butte is located in the southeast corner of Washington State near the city of Richland. It rises 500 feet from the valley below and faces primarily southwest. This is one of those magical slopes that you can literally spec out any size sailplane regardless of wing loading. With Kiona and Chandler Buttes nearby, this area of Washington is a sloper's paradise for sure. Chandler Butte is located approximately 5 miles west of Kiona Butte. The slope faces northwest and drops sharply for over 800 feet. The shoulder area north of the main bowl is the best place to land. The air there is very laminar, and the LZ just has a few rocks and bushes you have to contend with. Today, the wind is gusting to over 40 knots, and is the type of ballistic conditions that John Higgins designed the rodent for. This particular rodent has a 48-inch wingspan with an all-up weight of around 4 pounds. If you plan on visiting this area, be sure to check out the Mid-Columbia Soar's website for the latest news and rules for accessing these slopes. For many years, local flyers in Acton, California have been flying the front side of a saddleback-shaped slope called Parker Mountain. Pilots there and elsewhere have been forever warned about the danger of having a plane blown back into the infamous rotor of turbulent backside air. In 1995, an accidental event occurred which would prove to revolutionize the building and flying of RC gliders all over the world. Dynamic soaring is a phenomenon known to be used by albatross to fly long distances across the ocean without flapping their wings. While flying an RC glider, world champion soaring pilot Joe Wurts discovered that by taking advantage of differing velocities of adjacent air masses, incredible energy could be harnessed and used to attain speeds we never before dreamed of. The fog in this footage gives a good visual image of those differing air masses and what is occurring. Enter the world of dynamic soaring.
Start of dynamic soaring is, at least as I've found it, this is something that actually we found at this site, Parker Mountain, and it dates back previous to EPP airplanes, probably 95 time period. We've been flying the old style foamies up here, Anabats, Pink Floyds, and the such. So we were flying white foam and pink foam combat airplanes. And there was one day we're blowing fairly good Santa Anas, and the best I can recall, I don't have this defining aha time moment where I understand DS, but from what I remember best, it was one day we were flying combat and one of the guys, probably Pat, knocked me out of the sky. Airplane goes back behind the hill, and I kind of whipped the turn and recovered it, and it came back with more energy than it left with. It's like, this is cool. The engineer in me kind of figured out what's going on. This is dynamic soaring. And so I started playing in the first, it must have been a really good day, I was doing loops, and the airplane was doing really good in vertical loops, carrying lots of energy and all that. And as I know now, vertical loops is one of the least efficient ways to do it, but it worked pretty good for that day. Then I started inclining those loops more and more horizontal, and I got that stupid little Pink Floyd to where it would flutter. And I've been up here on days where it's calm, kind of like today, and I've thermaled up to 300 or 400 meters up, or 1,000, 1,200 feet, and dove it straight down, and it'd just get up to its terminal velocity and sit there. You just watch this little pink thing slowly get bigger. It wouldn't flutter there, but I could go out and do dynamic soaring, wrap it up, I could get the stupid little foamy fast enough where it would flutter. In other words, go faster than its terminal velocity in horizontal flight. And it took me about a year before I actually said, I want to fly a glass airplane. I was too chicken. Parker is not the most friendly of landing places for an airplane, and my F-3B airplanes I care a lot about. So the first day I did it, it was blowing about 40 miles an hour at Santa Ana's. Perfect conditions for dynamic soaring. Threw the airplane off. I didn't put any ballast in it. All I had was the steel wing joiner in it. And the airplane got going so fast, so quickly, that I just got scared. In fact, that was the best day I'd ever flown dynamic soaring. Some of the conditions were such, I'd go back and do 4 or 5 orbits, go vertical, and the airplane would go vertical for more than 9 seconds. And it would go up to a little dot in the sky. It was definitely doing a zoom of greater than 1,000 feet vertical from pulling from horizontal. And that's on a wing loading of under 16 ounces per square foot. The engineer in me, of course, says, let's go figure that out. And I backtracked it out using an RG-15, since it was an RG-15, used the drag coordinates and such, and found out that the airplane was doing somewhere on the order of 270 to 280 miles an hour, just from maybe 5 circles. And at that point I realized that this could be entertaining. Then I wrote a little analysis program and found out that in those conditions, the top end potential was on the order of 400 miles an hour. Which makes sense considering that I wasn't flying optimized and I bailed out after 4 or 5 circles. So if you go wrap it up and if the airplane doesn't blow up, you can get an airplane up upwards of Mach 0.6. Dynamic soaring's pretty cool.
In 1996, about a year after Joe's discovery, John Rowe produced a video which featured Joe dynamic soaring at Parker Mountain. Prior to the release of this video, Joe's explanation for his backside flights in magazine articles and various online discussions were met with considerable skepticism from the RC community. The Rowe video showed Joe's plane de-icing at speeds that were beyond belief. Within a short period of time, the skepticism was replaced with enthusiasm as pilots around the world became eager to find a slope where they could practice this new style of flying.
That'll say 30-minute difference.
Just a couple ounces, huh?
Gross balance.
Whoa! That would have fluttered it. Imagine doing this with an F3F course. Jesus Christ. We'll have to do it on the front just to show you a comparison on the air speeds. I still have a little bit of excess speed. I can't even turn it hard.
Come on, Joe, this ain't no fun.
Yeah, this is kind of boring, isn't it?
Los Banos Creek Reservoir offers many slopes to fly from. The locals call this spot the DS Divot. It's located directly behind one of the primary slopes, and it produces a decent amount of energy when a northwest wind is blowing. During a storm, the wind often switches to the opposite direction, and when that happens, you can launch your plane on this little hill and DS the other side, which drops for a few hundred feet before reaching the water. The surface of the water also provides a pretty good indication of what occurs after the wind separates at the top of the hill. Today, the energy is pretty good. Pat Bowman and Charlie McMurray launched their foamies to check out the separation, and within a few minutes, Charlie managed to fold the wings on his Bandit.
Oh!
little while later, Mickey Crowley launched Tim Cohn's Vindicator and got it wound up pretty good. At Sunset State Beach, there's a couple of spots that are de-icable. This one's called the Shark Cage. Unfortunately, the park rangers don't allow us to fly from this spot anymore. When Scott launched Lurch, it was blowing around 20 knots and the energy was pretty good.
Flutter.
Well, we're rapidly approaching the Mecca between this spot was discovered by an old sloper named Magellan.
The Mecca is actually located on private property, and because of liability concerns, the landowner has asked us not to reveal the exact location.
Wow. It's a sweet spot right there. I snuck right into it on accident. Oh man, I can't do that.
That was near bush flippers.
Try the low line. Oh, that sounded awesome.
Scott found this site while he was out cruising around looking for DS slopes. It has a pretty sharp ridge, and today the separation is excellent. The only real drawback here is there isn't much of an LZ, and as luck would have it, one of the elevator servos came unplugged during Dave's flight, so he wouldn't be able to use flaps when he landed.
Glad you get
Was that flutter?
Oh yeah, that was flutter, but that wasn't for my fault. But
Can't you put it in a little tighter?
the elevator's getting spongy.
Right on, dude.
Located a few thousand feet above sea level, this particular site is located on private property. There are two main slopes that are divided by a sharp ridgeline that runs east and west. Today, the wind is out of the northwest, and Scott is checking out the backside groove with one of his DS homebrews.
Backing off now. Feel the air back here?
Yeah.
Not bad. I was going a little faster than I wanted to, but see if there's any rocks caught it. I got lucky. I mean, there's like, you know, there's like stuff like this here. All kinds of little ones.
A few months later, Scott and Dave managed to get up here with a couple of brand new Ellipse 2Vs. The wind was blowing out of the south, which is a typical wind direction around here when a storm is approaching. Although it wasn't blowing as hard as they had hoped for, it turned out there was plenty of energy to have some fun.
I went back to a standard antenna instead of the rubber duck.
It's the manly antenna.
Yeah, I'm about ready to go back to the
Yeah, he's down there with his 30-06 getting ready to take you out. bumping around so bad up there, down there. Oh, right on the rocks. Oh man, little baby.
To help prevent the V-tail from fluttering again, Dave decided to land and mass balance the tail by taping a few grams of lead to the leading edge. This was a technique that Wurts had used to help eliminate flutter on his F-3B Eagle wings, and the idea was to do the same thing on the 2V tail feathers, but just on a smaller scale. It seemed to work pretty well, as the next flight was much smoother. Dynamic soaring had been around for about 5 years before a radar gun was brought onto the scene. This quickly became a popular and accepted method of setting unofficial world records within the RC glider community. The following footage documents many of these record-setting flights and attempts that occurred between May of 2000 and October of 2005. It all started when Dave Winslick and Steve Wilcox stopped by Parker Mountain on their way home from the PSS Fest at Cajon. Dave happened to have a radar gun with him, and Joe Wurts volunteered to fly his F-3B Eagle so they could get some speed readings. The wind was blowing about 15 miles per hour when Joe launched, and he pushed the plane so hard that an already weakened carbon joiner eventually failed, but not before setting what would become the first unofficial DS speed record of 156 miles per hour.
Okay, we've got just about the right amount of energy.
Oh, look at him, man. He rolled. It's flapping.
Oh, yeah. That's how it was flying the last little bit.
Chandler Butte has a large and very steep northeast-facing slope that drops for over 1,000 feet. The southwest side is less impressive and drops gradually for about 200 feet to the farmland below. When Paul Nathan launched his custom-built speedrunner, the wind was blowing between 24 and 27 knots from the southwest, creating perfect conditions for some extreme dynamic soaring.
148, 154, 127, 143, 43 again. Come on, there's nothing. 158.
Come on, 170.
156. 158. 165. 163. At an angle, doesn't read it well enough. 146. 154. 157. 159. 160. 170. 152. 165. 167. 173. 167. Now it's in the boundary. It is higher. See, when it's higher. Most passes were 120 to 150, many passes over 150, and the highest was 173. There were actually 2 over 170.
Well, I landed because I went by and I noticed there was kind of a dark area here and the nose cone was sort of working its way off for some reason. So I landed it was about that far off. Oops, I crapped my pants.
In June of 2001, a few friends from the Bay Area made the trek to Parker Mountain with hopes of setting a new record. Dave Reese brought with him an ellipse 2B, which had been custom built by Jarl Mueller of Slovakia. Overall, the plane was very stout, but as it turned out, the VTL was not, and this would lead to flutter problems. When Dave launched, the wind was gusting between 14 and 18 knots, and the separation was pretty clean.
48. 58. 53. 165. 161. 46. 54. 169. 169. 162. 64. 62. 61. 62. 67. 160. 166. 161. 173. 157. 149. 155. 131. 58. 160. 154. 162. 168. 173. Oh.
Next, Barry Baskin would give it a go with his new DS toy, the Mega Millennium. This extra beefy model was custom made by R&R Sailplanes in Milpitas, California. The wings and fuse were very stout, and to top things off, Barry had a custom chronological wing joiner manufactured to replace the oversized carbon one that came with the plane. By the time he launched, the conditions had backed off a little, but he still managed to reach a top speed of 152 miles per hour, which was a new personal best.
132. 130. 119. 132. 124. 139. 125. 134. 147. 132. Good right now. 152. Wow. 145. There it is. 147.
Sweaty palms here, man.
A little while later, Joe Wurts showed up, and Barry generously handed Joe his transmitter so he could have an opportunity to try and break the record. By this time, the wind had picked back up and was gusting between 15 and 20 miles per hour.
149. Let's check the other side out.
Laser flexing. What's that?
You're flexing the chronological joiner, man.
127.
44.
48.
There it is. Flutter. Right out of the juice here.
Nice. Check out what made them.
What about the tail?
Flap seems. Maybe it's the rudder.
Probably.
51, 44,
I just heard.
Oh, there you are.
Did you get 175?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah! 75?
Yep.
76. Whoa!
Flutter.
In April of 2002, Shred Air hosted the first ever Dynamic Soaring competition. The location was Cape Blanco State Park in Oregon, which is world-renowned for its scenic beauty as well as its strong and consistent wind.
Man, it blew out the ocean, hit me right in the face.
During the pilots' meeting, Dieter explained the rules and the different classes that the pilots could compete in. The competition was divided into 4 classes, 3 of which would be based on top speed using the following wingspans: up to 60 inches, over 60 inches to 100 inches, and anything over 100 inches was in the unlimited class. A 1-minute climb out with a maximum of 20 circles per speed attempt would be allowed. The 4th class was open to all wingspans, and the task was to fly 10 circles as fast as possible. The separation was low and turbulent, and this would prove to be very challenging even for a DS master like Joe Wurts. After several attempts, Joe managed to fly 10 circles in 15.6 seconds, which put him in first place.
41.
6, 7, 8, 9.
141. That was pretty shitty. Well, how many tents do you get to do? 100 tents?
Well, until nobody's, until somebody else steps in, I get to be a...
You just get to practice a lot then, isn't that right?
Yeah.
There you go. Now that's where you're going to get your speed in the initial dive, isn't that right? No. 95. 112. 120. 132. 151.
151?
151.
The 60-inch class turned into a real shootout between Barry Baskin, Espen Torp of Norway, and Joe Wurts. The weapon of choice would be the stock Nemesis. During the first day of the event, Joe set the record at 138 miles per hour. Later that day, Joe's Nemesis crashed because of battery failure, and Barry generously loaned him the use of his Nemesis so he could continue to try and set a faster time. Barry also loaned his plane to Espen, and after a few attempts, Espen managed to tie Joe's record of 138.
128.
By the second day, all three of them were taking turns with Barry's Nemesis, and then finally Barry set a new record of 143 miles per hour, which put him in first place.
Right on the backside after 137 5 times, 143. Espen, what did you get? Come here.
I got a 138, which isn't bad.
Second
I want to
fastest time.
congratulate you.
Well done.
5 miles per hour better. Nobody can beat that.
No, well, I think they can. It's just...
No, we stopped now.
We're putting it away now, right?
In the Unlimited class, Craig Toutolmin placed third as he flew his modified Pike Extreme to 155 miles per hour. The plane was rock solid thanks to the modifications that Craig made, but it just wouldn't go any faster in these conditions.
$150. 1035.
Joe Wurts placed second in the Unlimited class, flying his Icon to 171 miles per hour. This is a very fast model that Joe originally designed for F3B and F3J competitions, but unfortunately the plane would not survive beyond his abilities.
44. 51. 159. 163.
12. 13, 14, 15.
171. Spar caps aren't damaged, so it's either A, a shear web failure, or B, a box peel. I'm betting on B.
Scott Hewett got first place in the Unlimited class by pushing his custom-made Ellipse 2V to its structural limits. We don't have any footage of the actual flight, but on his final run, Scott had several circles in the high 170s, and shortly after reaching 183, the tail fluttered completely off the airframe, causing him to crash. In the over 60 to 100 inch class, the third place finish went to Craig Toutolmin for flying a plane he designed and built called the Circle Jerk. This plane was designed specifically for DS and was super strong. Craig managed to fly it to 168 miles per hour with no structural problems whatsoever, making it the second fastest homebrew at the event.
146 again. 146 again. 152. 149.
155. The second place finish went to Tom Seitz for flying his Mojo to 171 miles per hour. The Mojo is a plane that Tom designed and built specifically for DS, and without a doubt it was one of the strongest planes around. The day prior to the event, Tom set a new world record when he flew his Mojo to 186 miles per hour.
$147. 151. 162.
Steve Cooper was a proud owner of this custom-built compact Wizard. This was one of the first DS versions that was ever produced, and the manufacturer did a fantastic job making the wings and fuse exceptionally strong.
put it in ballast? No. This is unbalanced. Maybe. Give it a twist. Can't twist it. Scoop, this might be the only plane we've ever had that might withstand your flying.
Will outlive me, yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Steve couldn't attend the event, so he generously loaned Dave Reese his Wizard to compete with. Dave managed to hit 186 miles per hour, tying the world record that Tom had set the day before. But during his second run, the full flying tail fluttered and blew completely off.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah!
It's quicker. This is quicker. Definitely quicker. Too high. Oh, there it goes. Watch out. Oh, shit. Hit the brakes. It's a gun.
No, fly it back. Oh, no. Enough!
Better go down and go for a swim, I guess. I'm really sorry, Scoop. It's just got a little water damage.
The slot is located in Northern California near the town of Benicia. The southwest side faces the prevailing wind direction and drops gradually for about 200 feet. The northeast side is much steeper and drops for over 300 feet, creating some pretty good separation for DS. Unhappy with his results at the DS Fest, Craig Toutolmin went to work designing and building a plane specifically for breaking the 200 mile per hour barrier. The result was a 15-pound plane he calls Mofo. The wing is quad tapered and has a double spar system. The airfoil of the center panel is an MH-24 and the tips are Selig 2055. The ailerons have Kevlar hinges and taper out next to zero. The wing tips are also mass balanced on the quarter cord using 20 ounces of lead that was installed along the leading edge. The fuse was made using the lost foam method but without removing the foam from the boom area, where there is also a built-in spar. The tail was made from solid basswood sandwiched between 5 ounces of carbon on a bias. The elevator was hinged with Kevlar and split into two halves with one servo running each surface similar to a V-tail setup. On May 24, 2003, about a month after he completed the project, Craig would be rewarded for all his hard work by being the first pilot to crack 200 miles per hour. When he dropped in on the backside for his record run, the front side winds were gusting between 39 and 45 miles per hour. The day after Craig's run, Dave Reese showed up at the slot with hopes of also breaking 200. He brought with him what was considered to be a bulletproof version of the compact Wizard. The conditions weren't as strong as they had been the day before, but it was good enough for Dave to join the 200 mile per hour club and set a new record. Unfortunately, the full flying tail on this whiz did the same thing as the one at Cape Blanco, this time narrowly missing the cameraman as it whizzed by.
Here we go.
197. 206.6.
got a new world record at 206.6.
It's right here at 195 PB.
A couple of months after Kyle Paulson raised a record to 229, Gary Legerton set off to Parker Mountain with a brand new 2-meter carbon Opus W in hopes of setting a new record. This footage is a little bumpy, but I think you'll agree the audio track really captures the excitement and drama of what happened during Gary's 232-mile-per-hour record run.
67, 169, 161,
190. 207. 223. Woo! 215. 211. 216. 232.
There it is!
There it is, the record.
Gary Legerton, 232.
Oh man, it blew up.
Fuck, there goes the fuselage.
Shit. Holy cow. Shit. Oh, fuck. 232.
Oh, man. He had a short life, but it was a good life.
Smile for us,
Got the
Gary.
record, man. 232. Put it there.
She didn't like it,
She
though.
didn't like it.
227.
During the 2 years following Gary's record run, there was one pilot and 2 planes that would dominate the DS record all the way to 301 miles per hour. The pilot was Kyle Paulson, and the planes were the 2-meter and 100-inch Extreme. Both of these planes were designed and built by Brian McLean of MC Composites. Thanks to Brian's excellent design work and Kyle's exceptional piloting skills, both of these models have been proven to be the strongest production plane available for dynamic soaring. In October of 2005, more than 5 years after pilots started chasing the DS record, an opportunity came up that would allow Kyle Paulson a shot at breaking 300. The forecast was calling for strong Santa Ana winds, so Kyle decided to head to Parker Mountain with a few friends, his 100-inch Extreme, and 2 radar guns that were calibrated to 301 miles per hour. The rest is history.
280. 273. Wow, we're right on. These guns are identical. Yep, 274. 278. 272. 287. 280.
Listen to that. Sounds like thunder.
272. 275.
Wow, shear went low.
84. 96. 96. 91. 94.
Woohoo! 301.